So hey everyone, Molten here and back with another rapid game in our series. So today we got the black pieces finally. So one e4, let's go c5. So today we might try a different Sicilian, and of course our opponent goes for one c3. Alapin is probably one of the most annoying anti-Sicilians here. So we can go with our repertoire, which I showed in the video, which was d5 and knight c6. Okay, let's go d5. So if you prefer more open positions and you want positions where you have a little bit more activity, then d5 is probably the way to go. Our opponent didn't take, which is usually the most critical response. Instead has gone for e5 and allowed us to play knight c6 and gone with d4. I think the main problem here is that we do manage to get our bishop outside the pawn chain, and we get like a very good version of the French. If I go bishop f5 straight away, he might be able to take here and then get like a big pawn chain going. So I'm going to take the pawn just so that doesn't happen, and I'm going to develop the bishop outside the pawn chain with this move bishop to f5, which solves the main issue with the French defense. And later we can play the move pawn to e6 and close up this pawn chain with a pretty healthy position. So now we just have to finish our development. I probably will just develop this bishop somewhere. I'm thinking around about here. We also can go for this pawn, which is another form of playing here as black. For example, we play the move bishop to g4 and then threaten to take the knight, and then maybe go for this pawn on this square with, let's say, knight e7, knight f5, and maybe queen to b6. We do waste the tempo, but I do like the idea of putting pressure on d4. So I'm going to waste the tempo here and go bishop to g4. And normally I wouldn't give up my bishop, but here I'm sort of tempted in actually playing bishop takes knight. I could also wait a move. I might play knight to e7 first, and then I'll take the knight and then go knight f5. Yeah, especially after h3, I'm just going to play knight f5 because that gives me a valuable tempo. And now I go queen b6 and we get like a good French defense and go for this pawn on d4. Bishop to e3, so we do have the option of taking, and then after pawn takes, queen h4 in that position. So we do check the king. The king has to walk up probably to d2, but it's not necessarily that bad for him to have the king on d2. I mean, we don't have any ways to really hit the king further after that. Perhaps we can take queen check, king d2, play g6 and bishop h6 to put pressure on this e3 pawn. That might be a decent option. There might be some positions there where you can sack the bishop on e3, maybe grab 3 pawns for the piece. Another option is just to go queen to b6. This looks kind of simpler option, and I'm not sure if we're actually threatening to take the pawns, but I think queen b6 is a lot simpler, so I'm just going to go queen b6, see what our opponent does. We're hitting both the pawns, but I'm not sure if we're threatening to take it yet because he has queen a4 in some positions. Then maybe we are. knight takes, queen a4, we can just shuffle the king to d8, and we are a pawn up there. But yeah, this is a very useful idea, especially for those of you who play like the Caro-Kann or other openings, which can get into this French defense pawn structure. We see even from Sicilian in this particular game of this plan where you give up the light squared bishop and just apply pressure to d4. So those of you who play the French are probably already aware of this, but if you don't play the French, then it's useful to know. So now we can take the pawn, or we can give check. Now if we take the pawn, he's going to have some compensation probably after castles. So I will probably just go for this. I also have this very tempting knight h4 just to damage his pawn structure. That also is an option. But this check looks very annoying, so I'm just going to check. See what he does. He's probably going to move his king to f1, yeah. And now my immediate thought is just to either go knight h4 or to castles and play f6. So I quite like castles f6, so let's just go that. So we want to play f6, we want to open up the f file and bring our rook into the game after that. Looks very promising for black. I expect g3 and king g2 to artificially castle the king to safety. Okay, let's play bishop to e7 now. So now we're preparing to play f6 next move, which is a typical break in the French defense. Queen to d2. Okay, so we have the option of playing f6 right away. Does he have knight f4 in that position? Pawn takes, knight takes. We have the move pawn to e4 there. If he takes our rook, we can perhaps take his bishop or take back. Not sure if that's enough. We also have this move knight to a5, threatening knight c4 and knight to b3. That also looks like a very good option. We could also throw in f6, and after knight f4, we could then play knight a5 to defend the e6 pawn. That might also be an option. Okay, so let's calculate f6 first. So knight f4. So we're not worried about takes because we just go bishop takes. So okay, so knight to f4. Pawn takes e5. Knight takes e6. Now he's attacking our d5 pawn in that position. He can never take here either because we have pawn to d4. So after f6, knight f4 takes, knight takes. Now the only really move that makes sense to defend d5 there is to play e4. If he moves his bishop, then probably we just move our rook. It doesn't look that great, if I'm to be honest. Is there anything else we have? Maybe we wait on f6. Maybe we play this knight a5 move first, so we don't give ourselves a weakness yet on e6. And now we threaten these, and then we just see what he does. And then we play f6 next move. Okay, so there I think I play knight c4, so the pawn here is getting attacked on b2. I kind of like playing the non-committal moves first instead of these pawn-based moves if I'm not sure what to do, since knight a5 doesn't really weaken our pawn structure in any way, and it comes with a few threats. So yeah, probably if we take the pawn here, he just goes rook to b1 and pins us. Let's play the move rook to c8. We just developed the rook. We threaten taking on both squares here. Always good to line up your rook with your opponent's queen. Okay, so this one blunders the exchange, so we can just take and pick up the rook. Is there anything better? Probably, I mean, maybe, but this looks simplest. Let's go for that. We can also just win the pawn on b2 afterwards as well. So we take here, we take the rook and we take the pawn. Check, and we just capture here. Could also play f6. It doesn't really matter, I think. Yeah, so we almost had this move rook to c1, but here it doesn't quite work. So we can bring the rook to the rank here, or we can just take the pawn. Kind of just want to take the pawn actually, and then start pushing. Let's just do that. Let's just take the pawn and push the b pawn up. Also place the queen on e3. It's a very, very good square for the queen. Do I need to? Probably don't need to. Yeah, I don't need to play this move, but I'm going to play it anyway. Just want to cover as many squares as possible. Maybe look to play bishop f4 check next. Okay, so push b5. Queen can't go to a4, and we just start marching these pawns up the board. Yeah, is not much, nothing much left for white in this position. Just keep pushing. In fact, we never had to really play f6, so we never had to weaken our position, which was a good thing. That one's a free pawn on d4, and we will take the one on e5 as well. This is why no one plays e5 in this opening, because it allows white to get rid of the light squared bishop and then improve, or black improve his position really quickly compared to like a normal French defense. And rook c3 and then bishop to d6 next. Yep, so we go rook to c3. And bishop to d6, bishop to h4 is also fine. Let's go bishop to d6. Queen f2, maybe rook c2. No, that's probably unnecessary. Let's just play c2 and then rook c2. Okay, so we'll just trade off everything. Just take. Simplest way to win is just to simplify the position, make sure we don't get back rank mated, and put our rook behind the pawn and just promote. Okay, good game. So we'll just take a very brief look at that, just to show you exactly why you don't really want to play e5. So you can see black has a tremendous score in the database after e5. Here, yeah, bishop f5 is fine, taking is fine as well. So there's many ways for black to play. After this, yeah, it's basically just equal here. After the move knight here, the d4 pawn is a lot weaker. That's why we played this move bishop to g4. And then, yeah, after this I thought black was a little bit better. Queen h4 was a good move. We didn't really spot that straight away. We were looking at knight takes. So I actually like queen h4 a lot more because of the dual threat of these two. But I thought hitting the b pawn was useful. So the check's fine, castles, and yeah, knight a5. So I think everything else we played in the game was reasonable after this. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next rapid game.